Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the wild, rugged world of the Inca Empire, where you're about to wander through a land of jaw-dropping mountains and roads that defy logic. Picture yourself in the Andes, 500 years ago, with no wheels, no modern tools, just you and a bunch of determined Incas building a network of paths that somehow hold an empire together. Spoiler alert, you'd probably trip over a rock and cry for Wi-Fi within the first hour. The Inca roads, or Capac Ñan, stretch thousands of miles, connecting deserts, jungles, and peaks in a way that makes modern highways look lazy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop a comment with your city and what time it is where you are. I love picturing you all cozy in different corners of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on a dusty trail in the heart of the Inca Empire, around the 15th century, with the sun beating down and the air so thin it feels like you're sipping oxygen through a straw. The Andes loom around you, all jagged peaks and dizzying drops, like nature's way of saying, good luck, buddy. The Incas, though, they're not phased. They've built an empire that spans modern-day Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile, and parts of Argentina and Colombia. Think a chunk of South America the size of a small continent. And you're here to figure out how they pulled off their greatest trick, a road system that ties it all together without a single wheel in sight. Yeah, no carts, no bikes, just human grit and some seriously clever engineering. As you take your first steps, you notice the path under your feet isn't some slapped-together dirt track. It's paved with stones, fitted so tightly you can't slide a credit card between them. The Capac Ñan, or Royal Road, isn't just one road. It's a network stretching over 25,000 miles. That's like walking from New York to Los Angeles 10 times. You're already sweating just thinking about it. The Incas used these roads to move armies, send messages, and trade everything from potatoes to gold. Imagine being a merchant, hauling a llama loaded with quinoa across a mountain pass, praying you don't slip into a ravine. Life here is tough, but the roads, they're the empire's backbone, making sure everyone stays connected. You pause to catch your breath. Did I mention the altitude? It's like trying to breathe through a cocktail straw. Around you, the landscape is a mix of stark beauty and pure intimidation. Valleys plunge thousands of feet. Rivers roar below, and clouds hug the peaks like they're too tired to climb higher. The Incas didn't just build roads through this. They made them last. Some sections are still standing today, mocking our pothole-ridden highways. You can't help but wonder, how do you even start building something this epic? No blueprints, no heavy machinery, just a bunch of people with rocks and a dream. Well, not just any people. The Incas were organized, like your mom's meal prep Sunday. Organized. You spot a group of workers in the distance, chiseling stones with tools made of bronze and obsidian. They're not slaves, mind you. More like neighbors pitching in for a community project. Except the project is holding an empire together. The Inca emperor, the Sapa Inca, is the big boss, and his word is law. He says, build roads, and everyone grabs a hammer. You're tempted to join them, but your arms are already noodles from carrying your imaginary backpack. The workers are chatting, laughing, maybe even singing, because building roads is just another day at the office. They're not thinking about fame or fortune. They're thinking about keeping the empire humming. As you trudge along, you realize the roads aren't just about getting from point A to point B. They're a statement. The Incas are saying, we own this land, and we're not letting a few mountains stop us. Every stone you step on is proof of their ingenuity, their stubbornness, and maybe a touch of insanity. You're starting to get why these paths are called the Royal Road. They're fit for a king, or at least a very determined llama. Up ahead, the trail twists toward a steeper climb, and you're wondering how they tackled that without modern tech. Spoiler, it's not with wheels, but with something way more creative. You're still trudging along this Inca trail, the sun dipping lower, casting long shadows across the Andes. Your legs are screaming, and you're pretty sure you've swallowed half the dust in Peru. The Capac Ñan stretches ahead, a ribbon of stone winding through mountains that look like they were designed to make you quit. You're wondering, why no wheels? I mean, come on, the wheel's been around forever, right? You picture yourself inventing one on the spot, rolling a cart down this path, feeling like a genius. But the Incas? They had other plans, and you're about to see why their no-wheel life was less crazy than it sounds. Let's get one thing straight. The Incas knew about wheels. You're not dealing with folks who missed the memo on basic tech. Archaeologists have found toy wheels on little clay figures from nearby cultures, so the concept wasn't alien. You imagine some Inca kid pushing a tiny wheeled llama across the dirt, giggling, while the adults are like, cute, but not for roads. Why? Blame the terrain. You're standing on a slope so steep it feels like the mountain's daring you to fall. Wheels are great on flat plains. But here, a cart would somersault into the next valley before you could say, bad idea. Instead, the Incas leaned into what they had: feet, llamas, and a whole lot of brain power. You glance at a llama grazing nearby, its fluffy face unimpressed by your existential crisis. These guys were the Incas' delivery trucks, carrying up to 50 pounds of goods across dizzying heights. You try picturing a llama pulling a cart up this incline, and yeah, it's a comedy sketch waiting to happen. Llamas are nimble, sure-footed, and don't need a paved highway to get around. Wheels would just slow them down or get stuck in the mud. You're starting to see the logic. Wheels aren't the answer when your roads are basically vertical. But it's not just the terrain. You're walking through an empire where manpower was the ultimate resource. The Incas had a system called mita, where communities pitched in labor for big projects. Picture a neighborhood block party, but instead of grilling burgers, everyone's hauling rocks. You see workers up ahead, men and women from nearby villages, stacking stones with a rhythm that's almost hypnotic. They're not grumbling? Okay, maybe a little. But this is their duty, their way of keeping the empire's heart beating. Wheels might have saved time, but they'd also disrupt this whole social setup. Why mess with a system that works? You pause to wipe sweat from your brow, noticing how the road curves to follow the mountain's natural shape. It's not fighting the landscape. It's dancing with it. The Incas didn't need wheels because they built roads that worked with the land, not against it. You're stepping on stones polished by centuries of feet, each one placed with care. Some paths are narrow, barely wide enough for two llamas to pass without a staring contest. Others are grand, paved avenues for the emperor's processions. You imagine the Sapa Inca strutting by, gold jewelry glinting, while you're stuck holding a llama's rope. Typical. The real genius, though, is how the Incas turned their limitations into strengths. No wheels? No problem. They used sledges, think giant wooden planks, to slide heavy stones into place. You picture yourself dragging one, grunting, while your Inca buddy sips chicha, that's their corn beer, and yells, "Faster, rookie!" They also used rollers, not wheels, to move massive blocks. You're tempted to try it, but your back's already filing a complaint. These techniques weren't flashy, but they got the job done, and the proof's under your feet. A road that's outlasted empires. As you keep walking, the path dips into a valley, and you hear a river roaring below. The air's cooler here, and you're grateful for the breeze. You're starting to get why the Incas didn't bother with wheels. They didn't need them. Their roads were built for people, llamas, and a whole lot of determination. Up ahead, You spot a worker sketching something in the dirt, maybe a plan for the next stretch of road. You're curious how they mapped out this massive network without GPS or even paper. Time to find out. You're still on this winding Inca trail, the Andes stretching out like a crumpled blanket of green and gray. The path under your feet feels deliberate, like someone spent hours debating every curve. You're not wrong. The Incas didn't just slap down stones and call it a day. They planned their roads with the kind of precision that'd make a modern engineer jealous. You're walking through a masterpiece, the Capac Ñan, and it's time to figure out how they mapped out this massive network without so much as a protractor. Spoiler, it involves a lot of staring at mountains and probably some very patient llamas. You stop to catch your breath, altitude still kicking your butt, and notice how the road hugs the landscape. It's not bullying its way through the terrain like some modern highway with dynamite and bulldozers. No, this path flows, dipping into valleys, sidestepping cliffs and climbing slopes, with a grace that feels almost respectful. You imagine yourself as an Inca planner, standing here 500 years ago, squinting at the peaks, trying to decide where to send the road next. Your first thought? Nope, I'm out. But the Incas? They had a system, and it started with knowing their land like the back of their hand. Picture yourself with a group of Inca surveyors. Let's call them the empire's nerdiest hikers. They're not carrying clipboards or GPS. They're using their eyes, their feet, and a deep understanding of the Andes. You're tagging along, tripping over roots while they point at distant ridges and chatter about sight lines and natural contours. They're reading the landscape like a book, picking routes that balance distance, safety, and effort. You're impressed, but also a little annoyed. How are they so calm when you're dodging loose pebbles and praying not to slide into a ravine? The Incas didn't have paper maps, but they had something just as clever. Quipus. These are knotted cords, like a mix of macrame and Morse code. You're handed one, and it looks like a tangled necklace your cat got into. Each knot, each color, holds data. Distances, elevations, maybe even the number of workers needed. You're tempted to untie it just to see what happens, but the surveyor glares at you like you suggested eating the sacred corn. These quipus helped planners track routes across thousands of miles, turning the Andes into a connect-the-dots puzzle. You're starting to get why the Incas were so good at this. They were obsessive about details. Now, you're standing at a fork in the trail. One path heads up a brutal slope, the other snakes along a river. You're voting for the river, but the Incas had bigger plans. They didn't just build roads for convenience, they built them for power. You overhear a planner muttering about sacred alignment. Turns out, some roads were laid out to line up with holy sites or celestial events. Like the solstice, you imagine them dragging a string across the mountains to mark a straight line. Also, the emperor's palace could catch the sunrise just right. It's extra, but you respect the commitment. You keep walking, noticing how the road widens here, narrows there, like it's adapting to the terrain's mood swings. The planners didn't fight the mountains, they worked with them. Steep climbs? They'd add steps. Rocky outcrops? They'd carve around them. You spot a stone marker, a huanca, half buried in the dirt. It's not just decoration, it's a signpost. Way to say, you're still on the right path. Don't panic. You're grateful for it, because getting lost here would be a one-way ticket to Llama Town. The planning wasn't just about the physical path, though. You're starting to realize these roads were a flex, an empire saying, we can tame the Andes. Every mile was a message to the people. The Sapa Incas got this. You picture the emperor's advisors, sipping chicha and sketching routes in the dirt, debating how to link Cusco to every corner of the empire. Cusco, the capital, was the hub, the heart, and every road led back to it. like veins to a beating pulse. You're a little jealous of their confidence, honestly. Your biggest planning win was picking a Netflix show before bed. As you round a bend, the trail opens to a view that stops you cold. Mountains rolling into the distance, a river glinting below. The road stretches on, perfectly placed, like it was always meant to be here. You're starting to get it. The Incas didn't just build roads. They wove them into the land itself. Up ahead, you see workers hauling stones, and you're curious how they turned these plans into reality. Time to roll up your sleeves and find out. You're still trekking along the Chapacñan, your feet aching but weirdly impressed by the smooth stones beneath them. The Andes are relentless, throwing cliffs and valleys at you like a grumpy landlord. But this road just keeps going, unfazed. You're starting to wonder how the Incas actually built this thing. No cranes, no cement mixers, just rocks, dirt, and a whole lot of elbow grease. You're picturing yourself trying to lift one of those boulders and immediately regretting every life choice. Let's dive into the nuts and bolts of how the Incas turned raw materials into a road that laughs at time itself. You're standing next to a pile of stones, some as big as your couch, others small enough to chuck like a baseball. The workers around you are busy, but not chaotic. Think less construction site, more synchronized dance. They're using tools made of bronze, obsidian, and even hardened wood. You pick up a bronze chisel, expecting it to feel like Excalibur, but it's more like a butter knife with attitude. Still, these tools are slicing through stone like it's day-old bread. You're tempted to try, but the guy next to you raises an eyebrow, and you decide to stick to watching. The Incas were obsessed with stone, and not just because it was everywhere. You notice how they pick each rock with care, like they're choosing avocados at the grocery store. Some stones are quarried nearby, hauled from cliffs you wouldn't climb without a harness. Others are river rocks, smoothed by centuries of water. You imagine dragging one of those bad boys up a hill, your back screaming, while a llama judges you from a distance. The workers use sledges, big wooden planks, to slide the heaviest stones into place. You picture yourself pushing one, grunting, while someone yells, "Pivot!" like it's a Friends episode. But it's not all about brute force. You're watching a mason fit 2 stones together, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle for masochists. The Incas didn't use mortar. They cut stones so precisely they lock together like Legos. You try to slide your finger between them, but there's no gap. None. It's humbling, considering your last DIY project was a wobbly IKEA shelf. They'd shaped the stones with smaller rocks, hammering and grinding until the fit was perfect. You're starting to think, these guys could have built a spaceship if they'd had the chance. Not every road is a stone masterpiece, though. You're walking on a section now that's packed dirt, reinforced with clay and gravel. It's less glamorous, but it works, especially in flatter areas, where rain might turn the path to mush. You notice ditches along the sides, channeling water away like the world's oldest storm drain. The Incas knew a muddy road was a useless road, so they got proactive. You're grateful, because slipping face first into a puddle isn't on your bucket list. You pass a worker mixing something that looks like mud, but smells worse. It's adobe, a mix of clay, straw, and who knows what, used to stabilize walls or fill gaps in rougher sections. You're tempted to poke it, but the worker's glare says, don't even think about it. Adobe's not sexy, but it's tough, holding up against rain and wind. You're starting to get why these roads lasted. Every material was chosen for a reason, like the Incas were playing 4D chess with nature. The real magic, though, is the teamwork. You're watching dozens of people, men, women, even some kids, hauling, chiseling, and tamping down dirt. This is Middle labor, where communities chip in for the empire's big projects. It's not forced exactly, but you wouldn't say no to the Sapa Inca either. You imagine yourself joining in, only to drop a rock on your foot and retire to the llama pen. Everyone's got a role, and the vibe is surprisingly chill. There's laughter, maybe a song or two. You're almost jealous of their camaraderie, until you remember you'd be allergic to this much dust. As you keep walking, you notice the road sloping upward, the stones giving way to rougher terrain. The workers are still at it, shaping the land with nothing but skill and stubbornness. You're starting to see how every rock, every layer of dirt, was a choice, a piece of a bigger plan. Up ahead, the path disappears into a gorge, and you hear the faint creak of something swaying. Oh, great. A bridge. Time to find out how the Incas crossed canyons without losing their lunch. You're standing at the edge of a gorge, the Capac Ñan, leading you to a drop that makes your stomach lurch. Below, a river churns like it's mad at the world, and the only way across is a swaying, creaking bridge that looks like it was made by someone who really trusts grass. Welcome to the Inca Suspension Bridge, a marvel of engineering that's equal parts genius. And are you kidding me? You're gripping an imaginary rope, wondering if you'd rather swim the rapids than step onto this thing. Spoiler, the Incas made it work, and you're about to see how they turned weeds into a canyon-crossing miracle. You take a deep breath, mostly to avoid fainting, and inch closer. The bridge is made of woven grass ropes, thick as your arm, lashed to wooden beams, and anchored to stone pillars on either side. It's sagging in the middle, swaying gently in the wind, and you're pretty sure it's mocking you. You imagine yourself crossing, one shaky step at a time, while a llama behind you sighs like, "Hurry up, tourist." The Incas built hundreds of these bridges, some spanning over 100 feet, to keep their roads connected across the Andes' wildest gaps. You're impressed, but also calculating how fast you can run back to solid ground. Let's back up and figure out how this thing exists. You're watching a group of workers, mostly women, actually, sitting in a circle, braiding grass like it's the world's toughest friendship bracelet. The grass is ichu, a tough, fibrous plant that grows all over the highlands. You pick up a strand, expecting it to snap, but it's like nature's steel cable. They're twisting it into cords, then braiding those into ropes, strong enough to hold a dozen people. You try to join in, but your braid looks like a toddler's art project, and the women chuckle. Fair enough, you're not quitting your day job. The process is intense. You're told it takes a whole community to make one bridge. Every year, villagers gather to harvest ichu, weave new ropes, and replace the old ones before they fray. It's like a neighborhood block party, but instead of burgers, you're hauling 200-pound cables across a canyon. You picture yourself trying to carry one, only to trip and roll down the hill like a sad burrito. The ropes are stretched tight, tied to stone anchors, and layered with wooden planks for a walkway. It's not fancy, but it holds, mostly because the Incas knew how to distribute weight like physics nerds. You're still staring at the bridge, debating your life choices, when a kid scampers across it like it's a playground. Show off. The bridge bounces under his weight, and you feel your breakfast reconsidering its stay. But here's the thing. These bridges were safe enough for armies, traders, and even the emperor's fancy litter. You imagine the Sapa Inca gliding across, carried by attendants, while you're clinging to the ropes, whispering apologies to gravity. The Incas tested their bridges regularly, and if one failed, they'd rebuild it faster. Then you can say, OSHA violation. What's wilder is how these bridges fit the Inca vibe. You're starting to notice a pattern. They didn't force the land to bend to their will. They worked with it. Grass grows everywhere. So, why not make it a bridge? You're almost jealous of their resourcefulness. Your biggest survival skill is reheating leftovers. The bridges also had a spiritual side. You overhear a worker muttering about offerings to the river spirits. Maybe some coca leaves or a splash of chicha. You're not sure if it's superstition or insurance, but you're tempted to toss in a granola bar just in case. You finally muster the courage to step onto the bridge. The ropes creak, the planks shift, and you're moving at the speed of a cautious sloth. Halfway across, you glance down. Big mistake. The river's a frothy blur, and your knees are staging a protest. But the bridge holds, swaying just enough to keep you humble. You reach the other side, heart pounding, and collapse onto solid ground, vowing to write the Incas a thank you note. Up ahead, the road climbs again, this time with steps carved into the slope. Oh, great. Stairs. Time to see how the Incas handled the Andes' steepest challenges. You're catching your breath after that wobbly bridge adventure. Legs still shaky, but the Capacñan isn't letting you off easy. The trail ahead shoots upward, a steep slope that looks like it was designed to punish you for skipping leg day. The Incas, of course, didn't flinch at this. They carved steps and zigzagging paths into the mountains like they were doodling on a napkin. You're staring at a staircase that disappears into the clouds, and your quads are already writing a resignation letter. Let's see how the Incas turned these brutal climbs into just another Tuesday. You take your first step onto the stone stairs, each one worn smooth by centuries of feet. These aren't your average steps. They're irregular, some knee-high, others barely a bump. You're stumbling like a toddler, learning to walk, while a llama behind you trots up like it's auditioning for a fitness commercial. The Incas didn't mess around with uniformity. They cut steps to fit the mountain's natural shape. You imagine trying to measure this with a ruler and giving up after 10 minutes. Instead, they just went with the flow, carving where the rock allowed, like sculptors with a deadline. As you climb, you notice the steps aren't random. They're strategic. The staircase twists to avoid loose rocks or sheer drops, guiding you up safely, if not comfortably. You're huffing and puffing, wishing for an escalator, when you spot a worker chiseling a new step. He's using a bronze tool, hammering with a rhythm that's almost soothing. You're tempted to ask for a break, but he's so focused, you just nod awkwardly and keep climbing. The steps are built to last, some reinforced with gravel, or small retaining walls to stop erosion. You're grateful, because sliding down this mountain would ruin your vibe. Now, the path levels out, but only for a moment. Up ahead, it zigs and zags across the slope, like a drunken snake. These switchbacks are the Incas' answer to stupidly steep terrain. You're walking one now, doubling back every few yards, and it's slow going. Your brain's screaming, "Just go straight up!" But your legs are like, "Chill, we're not Spider-Man." The zigzags spread out the climb, making it bearable for humans and llamas alike. You picture a trader hauling goods, muttering about the extra mileage, while his llama chews cud like it's on vacation. You pause to admire the view. Snow-capped peaks, a valley so deep it could hide a dragon. The switchbacks don't just make the climb easier, they protect the road. A straight path would erode faster than your patience in traffic, with rain and wind tearing it apart. The Incas knew this, so they wove their roads like a scarf, keeping them stable for centuries. You're starting to think they were part engineers, part wizards. Your only wizardry is finding the TV remote, so you're duly impressed. You're not alone on this path. You spot a group of workers hauling dirt to reinforce a switchback's edge. They're chatting, maybe joking about the newbie, you, who keeps tripping. This is middle labor again. Communities pitching in to keep the Empire's roads in shape. You imagine joining them, only to spill a basket of gravel and earn a collective eye roll. The work's tough, but there's a rhythm to it, a sense of purpose. You're almost tempted to grab a shovel, but your arms veto the idea. The path starts climbing again, and you're back on steps, each one a little victory. You notice some are wider, almost like mini platforms, giving you a spot to rest without falling off the mountain. The Incas thought of everything. Travelers needed breaks, and nobody wants to nap on a cliff edge. You sit for a second, pretending you're just admiring the scenery, and realize these roads were built for people, not machines. It's humbling, like the Incas are whispering, "We got you. Just keep walking." As you push on, the air gets thinner, and the steps get steeper. You're wondering how the Incas kept their roads from washing away in the rainy season. Up ahead, you see a stone wall along the path, and something that looks suspiciously like a gutter. Time to find out how the Incas played defense against Mother Nature's tantrums. You're still climbing this Inca trail, legs burning, but the Capacñan keeps surprising you with its stubborn refusal to crumble. The Andes aren't exactly forgiving. Rain pours, winds howl, and mudslides probably have their own fan club. Yet, the road under your feet is solid, like it's daring nature to try harder. You're noticing stone walls and channels along the path, clever little tricks that keep this highway from turning into a swampy mess. The Incas weren't just building roads, they were outsmarting the elements. Let's see how they pulled off this drainage and defense combo that makes your local potholes look like a personal failure. You're walking along a stretch where the road is flanked by a low stone wall, sturdy enough to stop a runaway llama, but not so tall it blocks the view. These retaining walls are everywhere, hugging the path like a protective mom. You run your hand over one, expecting it to be rough, but it's smooth. Each stone fitted so tightly you can't wedge a coin in. You're picturing yourself stacking these, only to create a wobbly pile that collapses in a sad heap. The Incas, though, were pros. Every wall is angled just right to hold back the hillside, keeping the road from sliding into the valley below. A light rain starts to fall, because of course it does. You're ready to grumble, but then you notice water trickling into a shallow channel beside the path. It's a drainage ditch, carved into the stone or dug into the dirt, guiding the rain away like a polite usher. You're impressed. Your last camping trip ended with a soggy sleeping bag, but the Incas had this figured out centuries ago. These channels are everywhere, some lined with pebbles, others just packed earth, all sloped to keep water moving. You imagine an Inca engineer squinting at the path, muttering, "A little to the left," while you're just trying not to slip. You keep walking, the rain pattering on your imaginary hat, and spot culverts, stone tunnels under the road that let streams pass through without washing everything away. You crouch to peer into one, half expecting a grumpy frog to glare back. It's simple, but brilliant. Like the Incas looked at a river and said, "Not today, buddy." You're starting to get why these roads lasted. Every detail was a shield against the Andes mood swings. Your only defense against rain is a flimsy umbrella that flips inside out. So you're taking notes. The walls aren't just for show either. You're on a steep section now, where the path cuts into the hillside like a shelf. Without those retaining walls, the whole thing would collapse faster than your New Year's resolutions. Some walls are terraced, stepping up the slope to slow erosion, like giant stone stairs for the mountain itself. You picture workers hauling rocks up here, singing to keep their spirits up, while you'd be whining about a blister. The walls also double as windbreaks, which you're grateful for as a gust tries to knock you over. Thanks, Incas. You notice? Some sections of the road are raised, built up with layers of gravel and clay to stay above flood-prone spots. It's like the Incas knew exactly where the water would go, probably from years of watching the land. You're tempted to lie down and test how comfy it is, but a passing worker gives you a look that says, "Keep moving, slacker." The raised sections are genius, keeping the path dry even when the valley turns into a lake. Starting to think the Incas could have taught your city's road crew a thing or two. The rain's letting up, and you're marveling at how the road's barely wet. The drainage system's working overtime, and those walls are holding strong. You overhear a worker talking about offerings to Pachamama, the earth goddess, to keep the land happy Maybe it's the chicha talking, but you're half tempted to toss in a thank you note. The Incas didn't just build for today, they built for forever, and it shows. Up ahead, you see a group of locals hauling more stones, and you're curious about who these people were, the ones who kept this empire's roads alive. You're still wandering the Chapac Ñan, the Andes stretching around you like a giant's playground, and the roads holding strong, despite the rain that tried to ruin your day. The stones under your feet gleam wetly, but you're not slipping. Thanks, Inca, drainage squad. Now, you're noticing more people on the trail. Men hauling rocks, women carrying baskets of dirt, even kids scampering around with armfuls of gravel. This isn't some top-down construction crew. It's a whole community pitching in, like a barn, raising but with way more altitude. You're curious about these locals, the heartbeat of the Inca road system, and how they turned road building into a group effort without anyone storming off in a huff. You're walking alongside a group now, trying to keep up without looking like you're auditioning for a fitness fail video. The workers are from nearby villages, part of the Mita system, where every community sends people to help with big empire projects. It's not exactly optional. Saying no to the Sapa Inca is like telling your boss you're skipping the mandatory team retreat. But it's not slavery either. You imagine yourself getting the memo to build a road and faking a cough to get out of it. These folks, though, seem into it, chatting and laughing as they stack stones. You're jealous of their vibe, considering your last group project ended with passive-aggressive emails. The group's organized like a potluck where everyone knows their role. You're watching a guy with a bronze chisel shape a rock, while a woman nearby tamps down dirt with a wooden tool. A kid, probably dodging his actual job, tosses pebbles into a pile, grinning like he's invented fun. You're tempted to join in, but your rock-lifting skills are more comedy sketch than Inca warrior. The workers aren't just locals, they're experts in their own way, knowing the land's quirks, where the soil's stable, where the rocks are sturdiest. You're starting to think your GPS app could learn a thing or two from them. What's wild is how this system scaled. You're picturing thousands of villages across the empire, each sending teams to build or maintain the Capac Ñan. It's like if every town in your state showed up to fix the same highway, except this highway's 25,000 miles long. You overhear someone mention the Elu, the extended family units that make up Inca society. Every Elu has a stake in the roads because they're not just paths. They're lifelines for trade, news, and the emperor's shiny gold deliveries. You imagine slacking off and your whole family giving you the stink eye. No pressure. You're handed a basket of dirt to carry. Great. Now you're officially part of the crew. It's heavier than it looks, and you're wobbling like a baby giraffe. The woman next to you smirks, but shows you how to balance it on your shoulder. She's from a village down the valley, here for a few weeks to help repair a washed-out section. You're impressed by the teamwork, but also wondering how they don't get sick of each other. Maybe it's the chicha breaks or the shared goal of keeping the empire connected. You're starting to get why these roads feel alive. They're built by people, not machines. The work isn't all sweat and rocks, though. You're noticing moments of downtime. A group sharing dried potatoes, another singing a song that's probably older than your hometown. There's a sense of pride here. Like, they know they're part of something bigger. You imagine the Sapa Inca sending a thank you note, but more likely, he's just chilling in Cusco, sipping corn beer. The workers don't seem to mind. They're keeping the roads open for traders, messengers, and even nosy travelers like you. You're grateful? Because getting lost in the Andes sounds like a bad reality show? As you hand off your basket, with minimal spillage, thank you, you notice a runner sprinting down the path, carrying a small bundle. He's moving like he's late for the world's most important Zoom call. That's a chasqui, one of the Inca's elite messengers, and he's part of the road's communication network. You're curious how they kept an empire this big, connected without phones or even carrier pigeons. Time to follow that guy and find out. You're still weaving through the Andes on the Capac Ñan, the road solid, under your dusty feet, and you're half convinced you'll never feel your calves again. The workers you were trailing are taking a break, munching on dried corn, but your attention's snagged by that runner who just zipped past like he's got a date with destiny. He's a Chasqui, one of the Inca's superstar messengers, and he's darting down the path with a bundle slung over his shoulder. You're panting, just watching him, wondering how he's sprinting at this altitude while you're struggling to tie your imaginary shoelaces. Let's chase after him, figuratively, because you're not built for that, and see how the Incas kept their empire chatting without a single text message. You're jogging to keep up, or at least pretending to, as the Chasqui bounds over stones with the grace of a mountain goat. He's young, maybe in his 20s, with a headband and a tunic that screams, "I'm on a mission." You notice a small knot of cords, a quipu, bouncing at his waist, probably carrying some cryptic message about taxes or a royal party invite. You're dying to know what's so urgent, but catching up to him feels like trying to outrun a caffeinated squirrel. The Chasqui were the empire's internet, relaying info across thousands of miles faster than you can refresh your inbox. The system's wild. You're picturing a relay race stretching from Cuzco to Quito, with Chasqui stationed every few miles at small huts called Chasquiwasi. Each runner covers a short leg, maybe a mile or two, then hands off the message to the next guy, like passing a baton in the world's highest altitude Olympics. You're standing near one of these huts now, a simple stone shelter with a thatched roof, and you can almost hear the next Chasqui warming up inside. You're tempted to peek in, but you're worried you'll interrupt their protein bar break, or whatever Incas used for energy. You're starting to get how this worked. The Chasqui you're trailing slows down, blowing a conch shell to signal the next station. It's not exactly a ringtone, but it gets the job done, echoing off the cliffs like a low-budget foghorn. You imagine yourself trying to blow one and just wheezing pathetically. He hands off his quipu and a verbal message, because some things can't be nodded to the next runner, who's already sprinting before you can blink. They could cover 150 miles a day, which is like sending an email from Peru to Ecuador without Wi-Fi. You're impressed, but also glad you're not the one running. What's cooler is how the Chasqui carried more than just messages. You're watching the new runner adjust his pack, which might hold anything from royal orders to sacred coca leaves, or even a fancy feather for the emperor's hat. You picture yourself as a Chasqui, only to realize you'd probably deliver the wrong package and start an imperial incident. These guys were trained from childhood, picked for speed and stamina, and they knew the roads like you know your coffee order. They even memorized verbal messages, because one wrong word could mean the difference between send potatoes and send soldiers. You're still marveling when you notice the roads getting busier, traders with llamas, locals hauling goods. The Chasqui dodge them like pros, sticking to the edge of the path. You're trying to keep up, mentally, while your imaginary lungs beg for mercy. The communication system wasn't just about speed. It was about control. The Sapa Inca could send orders to the farthest corners of the empire and get reports back, without leaving his palace. You're jealous. Your last group chat took 3 days to decide on pizza toppings. As you slow down, letting the Chasqui vanish into the distance, you spot a cluster of stone buildings up ahead. It's a tambo, one of the road's rest stops, looking like the Inca version of a roadside motel. You're curious what's inside, maybe a warm meal or a place to crash. Your feet are screaming for a break, and you're wondering how travelers survived these treks without modern sneakers. Time to check it out. You're still plodding along the Chapacñan, the Andes looming like they're judging your stamina, and your feet are begging for a timeout. The chasqui you were trailing is long gone, probably halfway to Cusco by now, while you're just trying not to trip over a rock. Up ahead, you spot a cluster of stone buildings huddled against the mountainside. A tambo, the Inca version of a rest stop, minus the overpriced coffee and sketchy bathrooms. It's calling your name, promising shelter, and maybe a chance to sit down before your legs, stage a full-on revolt. Let's poke around and see how these roadside hubs kept travelers and the Empire's VIPs moving. You shuffle toward the tambo, the air crisp and the path mercifully flat for once. The buildings are simple, stone walls, thatched roofs, nothing fancy, but they feel like a 5-star resort compared to the windy trail. You're imagining a neon sign flashing, "Welcome to Tambo Town," but instead, there's just a stone marker and llama giving you side-eye. These rest stops were spaced every 10 to 20 miles along the Capacñan, like pit stops for an empire on the move. You're grateful, because another hour of walking might turn you into a human pretzel. Stepping inside, you're hit with the smell of wood smoke and something cooking, maybe quinoa stew, if you're lucky. The tambo's bustling, but not chaotic. There's a group of traders unpacking their llamas, a couple of officials in fancy tunics arguing over a quipu, and a kid sweeping the floor like it's his life's mission. You're tempted to flop onto a straw mat and call it a day, but you're too curious about how this place works. Think of it as a mix of motel, warehouse, and community center, all rolled into one stone package. You're starting to wish your local gas station had this much charm. You wander over to a storage area where clay jars and woven baskets are stacked to the ceiling. This tambo's stocked with food, dried potatoes, maize, maybe some jerky from a guinea pig or two. You're not sure you're brave enough for that last one, but you're hungry enough to consider it. There's also cloth, tools, and even weapons, all ready for travelers, messengers, or the emperor's entourage. You picture the Sapa Inca rolling in with his gold-plated litter, demanding a snack, while you're stuck, holding a llama's rope. Typical. The tambo isn't just a supply depot. It's a lifeline. You're chatting, eavesdropping, on a trader who's restocking his pack. He's been on the road for weeks, and this is his first real break. The tambo's run by locals, part of their mita'a duty, who keep it stocked and tidy for whoever passes through. You imagine being the manager, juggling supplies and dealing with grumpy travelers, and decide you'd rather stick to your day job. The system's slick, though. Every tambo is linked to nearby villages, ensuring the empire's roads never run dry. You're handed a bowl of something warm by a woman who looks like she's seen 1,000 travelers and their bad manners. You mumble a thanks, trying not to spill, and realize these rest stops were social hubs too. Traders swap gossip, chasqui catch their breath, and officials scribble notes on their quipus. You're picturing a medieval version of a truck stop diner, minus the jukebox, but with better views. The tambo's where the empire's pulse feels strongest, connecting people from deserts to jungles. As you slurp your stew, not bad, needs salt, you notice a group of soldiers gearing up to leave. The tambo doubles as a base for the Inca army, with extra supplies for when things get dicey. You're glad you're just a tourist, not dodging spears. The road's quiet now, but you can feel its importance, like it's humming with stories. You're wondering how these rest stops tied into the bigger picture. Trade, power, all that jazz. Time to hit the trail again and see how the Capacñan kept the empire's economy buzzing. You're back on the Capacñan, leaving the cozy tambo behind, your belly full of quinoa stew and your legs grudgingly agreeing to keep moving. The Andes are glowing under a late afternoon sun, and the road stretches ahead, a steady ribbon of stone and dirt tying the empire together. You're starting to notice more travelers. Traders with llamas piled high with goods, locals hauling baskets of corn, even a fancy official with a feathered hat who definitely thinks he's a big deal. This road's not just a path. It's the empire's economic bloodstream, pumping goods and wealth from one end to the other. Let's follow the trade routes and see how the Incas kept their markets buzzing without Amazon Prime. You're walking beside a trader, his llama grumbling like it's over the whole journey. He's carrying bundles of textiles, brightly woven cloth that'd make your wardrobe jealous, and sacks of dried potatoes. You're tempted to ask for a sample, but his glare says, "Don't touch the merchandise." The Capac Ñan was a trade superhighway, linking coastal deserts to highland farms to jungle outposts. You're picturing a medieval Etsy, with goods flowing from every corner of the empire. Fish from the Pacific, coca leaves from the lowlands, gold from the mountains. Your last grocery run feels pathetic in comparison. The road's busy but organized, like a farmer's market with better logistics. You notice traders bartering. No coins, just straight-up swaps. A woman trades a basket of maize for a clay pot. Another hands over a blanket for some shiny obsidian tools. You're trying to imagine yourself haggling, probably offering your worn-out sandals for a single potato. The Incas didn't use money, but they had a system, with tributos, goods collected from communities, and storehouses to keep everything balanced. You're impressed, because your budget's basically a Post-it note with "Try not to starve" scribbled on it. You're passing a tambo now, its storage rooms packed with surplus goods, ready to redistribute. The empire's economy was like a giant potluck. Everyone chipped in, and the roads made sure it got shared. You're watching a llama train. Yep, that's a thing. Carrying alpaca wool to Cusco, where it'll be spun into robes for the elite. Llamas were the Incas' delivery vans, each hauling up to 50 pounds, though this one looks like it's plotting a strike. You give it a wide berth, just in case it spits. The road's smooth surfaces and gentle slopes were built for these guys, making trade faster than your last food delivery. What's wild is how the roads shaped the empire's diet. You're munching on a dried potato. Thanks, random trader, and realizing the Capac Ñan brought food diversity to places that'd otherwise be stuck with one crop. Highlanders got fish. Coastal folks got quinoa. You're starting to think the Incas invented the original farm-to-table movement, minus the hipster cafes. The roads also moved luxury goods, like spondylus shells from Ecuador, sacred to the Incas and worth more than gold. You imagine showing up with a shell necklace, only to realize it's the equivalent of flashing a Rolex. You're starting to get the bigger picture. The roads weren't just about moving stuff. They were about power. The Sapa Inca controlled the flow of goods, using tributos and tambos to keep everyone fed and loyal. You're picturing him in Cusco, sipping chicha, while you're out here, dodging llama droppings. The roads made it possible to collect and redistribute wealth, tying the empire's far-flung regions into one economic machine. You're impressed, but also wondering how anyone kept track without spreadsheets. As you keep walking, you notice a group of soldiers up ahead, their spears glinting in the sun. The road's not just for traders. It's a military highway, too, moving armies faster than you can say strategic advantage. You're curious how the Incas used these paths to flex their power and keep the empire in line. Time to pick up the pace and find out what happens when the Capac Ñan turns into a warpath. You're still trudging along the Capac Ñan, the Andes glowing faintly as the sun dips low, painting the peaks in shades of gold and shadow. Your feet are holding a grudge, but the road's smooth stones keep you moving, a testament to Inca stubbornness. The traders and their grumpy llamas are thinning out now, replaced by a group of soldiers marching in tight formation, their bronze-tipped spears catching the last light. You're not exactly thrilled to be near pointy objects, but it's clear this road isn't just for swapping potatoes. It's a military superhighway built to keep the Inca Empire's iron grip on its sprawling lands. Let's tag along at a safe distance and see how the Capac Ñan doubled as the empire's war machine and bureaucratic backbone. You're keeping pace with the soldiers, or trying to, while staying far enough back to avoid any "who's this guy?" glares. Their tunics are woven with bold patterns, and they're carrying slings and clubs. Simple, but deadly in the right hands. You're picturing yourself swinging a sling, only to hit your own foot and retire in shame. The Capac Ñan was a game changer for the Inca army, letting them move troops across thousands of miles faster than you can scroll through a news feed. You're starting to see why rebels didn't stand a chance. This road was like the Empire's express lane for backup. The soldiers are headed to a distant province, maybe to squash a rebellion or just flex some muscle. You're grateful you're not the target, because these guys look like they mean business. The road's wide here, built for marching armies, with tambos nearby stocked with food and weapons. You imagine a general barking orders at a tambo, while you're stuck refilling water jugs and dodging his bad mood. The Incas could mobilize thousands of troops in days, thanks to the road's straight stretches and rest stops. Your last group hike took 3 hours to pick a trail, so you're taking notes. But it's not just about fighting. You're noticing an official trailing the soldiers, his quipu swinging like a nerdy accessory. He's probably an administrator, sent to check on taxes or make sure some village isn't slacking on their mita duties. The Capac Ñan was the empire's nervous system, carrying orders from Cuzco to every corner. You're picturing the Sapa Inca in his palace, sipping chicha, while his officials used the roads to keep tabs on everyone. It's like a medieval surveillance network, except instead of cameras, you've got guys with knotted cords and a lot of patience. You're walking past a stone marker, a huanca, signaling a provincial border. The road's not just moving soldiers, it's knitting the empire together, making sure every region knows who's boss. You're starting to get how the Incas ruled a chunk of South America without email or even horses. The roads let officials collect tributos, goods like cloth or crops, and shuttle them to Cuzco or wherever the emperor needed them. You imagine being an official, trying to explain to a farmer why his best potatoes are headed to the capital. Good luck with that. The soldiers stop to rest, and you're grateful for the breather. You're eavesdropping. Okay, spying, as they talk about a recent campaign. The roads made conquest easier, letting the Incas swoop in before anyone could organize a decent defense. But they also kept the peace, with garrisons stationed at key tambos to handle trouble. You're picturing a bored soldier, sharpening his spear, waiting for action, while you're just trying to avoid stepping on his cloak. The roads were a flex of power, showing every village the empire's reach. As you move on, the soldiers marching ahead, you're struck by how the Capac Ñan shaped daily life, not just for big shots, but for regular folks. You're curious about the traders, farmers, and random travelers who shared these paths, living their lives in the shadow of the empire's grand plans. The road's getting quieter now, the military vibe fading, and you're ready to see what everyday life looked like on this ancient highway. You're still wandering the Capac Ñan, the Andes softening into twilight, the air cool enough to make you wish you'd packed a better imaginary jacket. The soldiers have marched out of sight, their spears no longer glinting, and the road feels quieter now, like it's catching its breath. You're passing regular folks, traders with creaky llama packs, farmers hauling baskets, a kid chasing a stray guinea pig like it's the Olympic sprint. This isn't just the Empire's VIP highway. It's a bustling artery for everyday life, where people live, work, and probably complain about the weather. Let's walk alongside them and peek into the daily grind of the Inca road, where the stakes are less conquer the world and more don't lose your potatoes. You're trailing a trader, his llama loaded with colorful textiles that sway with every step. He's muttering about a deal gone wrong in the last village, and you're trying not to laugh. Some things never change. The Capac Ñan was a lifeline for guys like him, connecting markets from the highlands to the coast. You imagine him bartering cloth for fish or coca leaves, haggling like it's Black Friday. You're tempted to offer your 2 cents, but your bartering skills are limited to begging for extra fries, so you just nod and keep walking. The road's alive with small moments. You spot a woman balancing a basket of maize on her head, chatting with a friend about a festival in Cusco. She's probably walked this path her whole life, knowing every twist and stone. You're jealous of her confidence. Your last hike ended with a twisted ankle and a grudge against nature. The road's smooth surface makes her trek easier, designed for people and llamas, not fancy carts. You're starting to see why wheels never caught on. This path is all about foot traffic, and it's packed with it. You're passing a farmer now, his hands calloused from years of work, hauling a sack of quinoa to a nearby tambo. He's part of the Mita system, maybe delivering his village's tributo to keep the empire happy. You picture yourself carrying that sack, only to trip and scatter quinoa like confetti. The farmer's unfazed, though, used to the road's demands. These paths weren't just for trade. They moved food to where it was needed, keeping bellies full across the empire. You're grateful, because your last meal was that tambo stew, and you're not ready to hunt guinea pigs. Kids are everywhere, darting around like they own the place. One's kicking a leather ball, another's trying to ride a llama that's clearly not into it. You're chuckling, because it's like watching your cousins at a family reunion, minus the smartphones. The road was their playground, their school, their world. You imagine growing up here, learning to weave or carry water before you could spell your name. It's humbling. Your childhood hardship was a dead Game Boy battery. You notice a small shrine off the path, a pile of stones with coca leaves tucked between them. A traveler pauses to add a pebble, whispering something to Pachamama, the earth goddess. You're tempted to join in, mostly because you could use some cosmic luck after nearly slipping on a whetstone earlier. The road wasn't just practical, it was sacred, tying people to the land and the spirits. You're starting to feel the weight of it, like every step is part of a bigger story. The crowd thins as the road climbs again, and you're alone with your thoughts. The Andes looming like silent giants. You're wondering how this vibrant world changed when outsiders arrived, boots stomping where llamas once trod. The Capac Ñan carried the Inca's dreams, but it also paved the way for their fall. You spot a distant figure, a soldier maybe, or a stranger in unfamiliar gear. The air feels heavier now, and you're curious how the Spanish twisted this road's purpose to unravel an empire. You're still treading the Capac Ñan, the Andes now cloaked in dusk, stars poking through the sky like they're eavesdropping. The road's quieter, the traders and farmers gone, leaving you with the soft crunch of your footsteps and the occasional hoot of some night creature. The path feels timeless, but there's a shift in the air, a faint unease. You're thinking about that stranger you glimpsed earlier, their odd gear hinting at change. Big change. The Spanish are coming, and they're about to turn the Inca's masterpiece road into a tool for conquest. Let's walk through the moment the Capac Ñan, built to unite an empire, becomes a highway for its downfall. You're imagining the year 1532. The road's still solid, but carrying new travelers, Spanish conquistadors, their boots heavy, horses clopping where llamas once ruled. You're picturing yourself as an Inca scout, spotting Francisco Pizarro and his men, their armor glinting like trouble. You'd probably hide behind a rock, muttering, Nope, not my problem. The Spanish didn't build the Capacñan, but they sure knew how to use it. You're walking a stretch now, wide and straight, perfect for their horses and cannons. It's like the roads, too good, handing them a free pass to Cusco. The irony stings. You're thinking about all the Chasquis who sprinted these paths, the traders who bartered, the soldiers who marched, all to keep the empire strong. Now, those same paths are guiding invaders to the heart of it. You're passing a tambo, its storage jars still full, and you realize the Spanish raided these like cosmic vending machines, grabbing food and supplies to fuel their march. You're tempted to kick a stone in frustration, but your toes aren't up for it. The tambos were meant to sustain the Incas, not feed their enemies. You're picturing the chaos. Spanish soldiers moving fast, thanks to the road's smooth stones and bridges. Those grass rope bridges you crossed? The Incas tried burning some to slow the invaders, but it wasn't enough. You imagine standing on one, torch in hand, debating whether to cut the ropes while horses thunder closer. Spoiler, you'd probably drop the torch and run. The road's efficiency, once the empire's pride, let Pizarro's small force, less than 200 men, outrun and outmaneuver the Inca army. You're starting to think the Capacñan was too perfect for its own good. It's not just the military advantage. You're walking past a Huanca marker, a silent witness to the empire's order, and you realize the roads gave the Spanish a map. They followed the Capacñan to key cities, using Inca infrastructure to topple it. You're picturing an Inca official, his quipu useless, watching strangers loot his tambo. It's like your Wi-Fi password getting hacked. Everything you built turned against you. The Spanish even used the roads to ship gold and silver back to Europe, stripping the empire bare. You're glad you're not carrying anything valuable, just your imaginary backpack. But the Incas didn't go quietly. You're thinking about the resistance, warriors ambushing Spaniards on narrow paths, using the Andes terrain to their advantage. You imagine setting a trap on a zigzag trail, rolling boulders like a cartoon villain, while the invaders curse their horses. Some roads became battlegrounds, others escape routes for Inca holdouts. You're rooting for them, but history's not on their side. The Capacñan, meant to bind the empire, carried disease and greed faster than Chasquis carried messages. You're pausing now, the road stretching into the dark, and you feel a pang for what was lost. The Spanish kept using the roads, but they didn't maintain them, not like the Incas did. You're picturing the Mita workers, their songs fading, the tambos emptying, yet parts of the Capacñan endured, stubborn as the stones it's made of. You're wondering what's left today, how this road lives on beyond empires and invaders. The path ahead feels like it's whispering secrets, ready to show you its modern legacy. You're still on the Capacñan, the Andes now a dark silhouette against a sky glittering with stars. The air sharp and cold enough to make you pull your imaginary cloak tighter. The road stretches beneath you, its stones worn but unyielding, carrying the weight of centuries. You're alone now. The traders, soldiers, and even the ghosts of Spanish boots faded into the night. The Capacñan story isn't over, though. It's not just a relic of the Inca past. You're walking its final chapter, where this ancient highway lives on as a modern marvel, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and a quiet reminder of what humans can build when they work with the land. Let's see how this road endures and what it means today. You're stepping carefully, the path lit by moonlight, and you can almost feel the road's pulse, like it's still breathing. Parts of the Capacñan are still in use. Locals in Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador walk these stones to markets or festivals, just like their ancestors did. You're picturing a farmer with a sack of potatoes, his sneakers scuffing where llamas once trod, and it's humbling. You're tempted to sit and soak it in, but the chill keeps you moving. The road's not just a path, it's a bridge between then and now, tying modern Andean communities to their roots. Your last walk was to a coffee shop, so you're feeling a bit outclassed. The world noticed this masterpiece too. You're imagining UNESCO folks in 2014 slapping a World Heritage badge on the Chapak Ñan, calling it a unique achievement. You're nodding along because 25,000 miles of hand-built road through mountains and jungles is the kind of flex that deserves a plaque. You're passing a restored section now, stones polished by modern hands, and it's like the Incas left a note saying, "Told you we were good." Tourists hike these trails today, snapping selfies where Chaskies once sprinted. You're half jealous, half relieved you're not dodging their camera lenses. What's wild is how the road's lessons linger. You're thinking about the Inca knack for working with the land, steps for slopes, bridges for gorges, ditches for rain. Modern engineers study this stuff, scratching their heads over how the Incas nailed sustainability without a single spreadsheet. You're picturing a city planner, stuck in traffic, wishing they'd learned from the Chapak Ñan's drainage systems. Your own eco-friendly move was recycling a pizza box, so you're taking mental notes. The road's a masterclass in resilience, still standing while your local highway crumbles every spring. You're passing a Tambo ruin, its walls crumbling but defiant, and you realize the road's cultural weight. Indigenous communities see it as a symbol of their history, their ingenuity. You're imagining festivals where people walk the Chapak Ñan, singing in Quechua, honoring Pachamama with coca leaves. You're tempted to leave a pebble as your own offering, but you settle for a quiet thank you to the stars. The road's not just stones. It's a story of people who shaped the Andes and left something eternal. You're feeling a bit philosophical, probably because you're tired and the altitude's messing with you. But it's not all rosy. You're thinking about the challenges, looters stealing stones, developers eyeing the land, climate change bringing harsher rains. You're picturing a future where the Chapak Ñan needs more than UNESCO to survive. Locals and governments are fighting to protect it, restoring sections, teaching kids its history. You're rooting for them, because losing this would be like losing a piece of the world's soul. Your biggest fight was with a parking ticket, so you're in awe of their grit. You stop, the road stretching into the dark, and take a deep breath. The Chapak Ñan's legacy is its stubborn endurance, a testament to human will and wisdom. You're grateful you got to walk it, even in your mind, and you're wondering what stories these stones will tell in another 500 years. For now, you're ready to let the road rest, its whispers fading as you drift towards sleep. You're standing still now, the Chapak Ñan fading into the soft hum of the Andes, the stars above so bright they feel like they're listening. The road's stones are cool under your feet, each one holding a story of workers, runners, traders, and dreamers who built something that outlasted time. You let out a slow breath, the air crisp, the world quiet. It's like the mountains are cradling you, whispering that it's okay to rest. You're sinking into the rhythm of the night, the road's weight easing, carrying you gently toward dreams. Picture yourself curling up under a blanket of stars, the Andes watching over you, their peaks soft against the sky. Let the road's story settle in your bones, a quiet lullaby of stone and sky. Sleep well, traveler. The Chapak Ñan will be here when you wake.